What does all this tell you about Israel's capabilities?
Well, it's clearly a product of some very good intelligence work, and I guess two dimensions had to happen, Andrew, to fall together. One was that Israel was able to get its hands on these pages or exact replicas of them and put into those pages something in the order of 50 grams or so of high explosive. Not more, because as we've seen from the videos, it's been very localised. Then the other thing, of course, is that pages operate on an electronic network. And so Israel worked out how to turn that network on, how to send a signal which would activate the bomb in each of those pages. An intelligence coup and an operational military coup, no question about it. And I agree with your intro. It was targeted against Hezbollah leadership, that is to say fighters who are sworn to the destruction of Israel. It was certainly proportionate in the sense that it is a response to daily rocket attacks harming Israeli civilians coming from southern Lebanon. And it's done so with minimal damage to civilians and other non-combatants, it would seem, in Lebanon. The icing on the cake is also injuring the Iranian ambassador, which, as you say, just shows how closely Iran is tied into these networks of terrorist groups which are out to do damage to Israel. So after the intelligence disaster of October 7 last year, this represents, I think, a high point of Israeli military and intelligence success.
I must add that those rocket attacks that Hezbollah has been mounting on Israel have kept more than 60,000 Israelis out of northern Gaza, away from their home for nearly a year now. All that said, what effect do you think this strike is going to have on the various conflicts that Israel has to the north with Hezbollah, to the south with Hamas, to the further south with the Houthis, and of course over in the east with Iran, that's the paymaster of all three terrorist armies?
Well, it's a fight which will continue, Andrew, but I think what we're seeing here is that Israel is actually able to get onto the front foot by doing something quite unusual, and that's taking the war to the military leaders of these organisations. It's normally the foot soldiers which are in combat or in harm's way. Here we see people who are part of the Hezbollah network, sufficiently important to that network to be in constant communication via a pager with their senior leadership. And I think the message that really Israel is sending is, we know where you are, we can find you. Don't think that being a commander, being able to hide in Tehran or being able to hide in Beirut is going to protect you. We'll be able to go after you. And I think that's going to give significant pause to Iran, to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Force, to the senior leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas, to think that they can't get away with their military action scot-free. It's not just the poor people of Gaza who suffer, it's the leaders of these organisations. So Israel is rebuilding deterrence on its terms, and I think that's a positive to take away from today's experience.
One final thing, Peter Jennings. China has meanwhile released video of one of its fighter jets 2 years ago, apparently intercepting one of our surveillance planes over the South China Sea. We've reported on that particular attack before. China claims, of course, it owns the South China Sea. It's actually international waters. And it dumped aluminium anti-missile chaff in front of our plane that could have brought it down. And with this video, there's audio from the pilot describing us as the enemy, saying we must show our swords to the enemy. But no word of criticism about that from the Prime Minister, no word of criticism from the Foreign Minister, and none from the Defence Minister. Here he is today.
We seek to build the most productive relationship that we can with China. We've said all along that we've sought to stabilise our relationship with China and work with China where we can, disagree where we must.
Peter Jennings, isn't this actually exactly when the government must disagree with China?
Of course it is, Andrew, and so much for the stabilised relationship. I mean, as always, Richard Marles is 48 hours behind in terms of his talking points. You know, after all of the efforts which the Albanese government has made to look the other way, to pretend that China doesn't present a strategic problem for Australia, when you have the Chinese military celebrating the fact that they are attacking us, attacking our armed forces as the enemy, we really do need to have the Prime Minister and the Defence Minister and Foreign Minister coming out in defence of the Australian Defence Force, if nothing else. I think our government's failure to treat China as the strategic risk it is, rather than pretending that it's somehow stabilised the relationship, is a significant weakness in the government's defence policy. And it's really something that needs to be addressed in a more serious way to acknowledge the threat and the risk which China presents, not just to Australia, but to many other countries in the Indo-Pacific region.
Absolutely correct. Peter Jennings, thank you so much indeed for your time.